In this module, we are going to be looking at the Elastic Compute Cloud Service, the EC2 service. And for us to get into the EC2 service, we need to type EC2 here to search EC2. If we type EC2, we are going to get more information on what the EC2 service is, just like we did for our previous services. So the EC2 is virtual servers in the cloud. The top features, you can go to the dashboard, you can go to launch templates, you can go to instances, you can go to spot instances and saving plans. We can come also to feature to see the main things, dashboard, AMIs, EC2 instances, and then you can come to resources. Equally have documentation, a lot of documentation around the Elastic Compute Cloud service. You can also look for knowledge articles, marketplace, blog posts, events, tutorials, and all of that. But our focus in this module will be to come to the services and go to our EC2. So you can also favorite this here. You can also favorite the EC2 service by clicking on the star here to make it favorite. And in addition to that, EC2 is also a region specific resource. So every EC2 instance or every virtual server you create is region specific. Now for us to get more insights, we click on EC2. When we click on EC2, this is the EC2 console. This is the EC2 console, and on this EC2 console you can see a lot of information relating to EC2 or servers on the cloud. Now one thing you should take note of before we can get more detail, before we can get further, is EC2 instances are one of the resources that are very expensive on the AWS cloud. So for starters, AWS offers free tier. You can get more information about free tier. They say the free tier lets you explore and experiment with EC2 at no cost. So if you are provisioning resources on AWS cloud, you must make sure you're using free tier resources. Let's get more information about free tier. You can right click down here, open a new tab. Remember we came on info here, then you come right here below, you right click and you open in a new tab. So if you open this in a new tab, you'll see what the free tier is. So AWS free tier. AWS free tier, you gain free hands-on experience with the AWS products and services. So for every AWS category, there are free trials. There are 3 types of offers. Of course, you get a free tier when you're creating an account. We have free tier compute, database, storage, containers, and so on. These are the different type of or different categories of AWS free tier. And if you come under AWS EC2, Amazon EC2, you will see that you have 750 hours of free tier usage for 12 months for the Elastic Compute Cloud service, the EC2 service. They say 750 hours per month of Linux, Rails, T2 Micro or T3 Micro instance, depending on the region. And then 750 hours of Windows T2 Micro and so on. So this is more about the free tier. Now back on the console, on the EC2 console, there are some key things which you must take note of, which is like this is a summary. We can have instances, capacity reservations, elastic IPs, key pairs, placement groups, snapshots, auto-scaling groups, dedicated hosts, instances, load balancers, security groups, and volumes. We already saw security groups at the level of the VPC when we're looking at VPC related resources. So in this module, we are going to focus first on instances. After instances, by creating instances, we understand what are Amazon machine images, we understand what are EBS volumes, we understand some components of security, load balancing, and then auto scaling. Now if you come to instances, we do not have any instance running. We have not provisioned any instance, basically meaning we have not created any virtual server on AWS cloud. And that is why for every instance or for every compute resource you have, you get to know the name of the resource, the instance ID, the instance state, if it is running, the instance type. You will see all of these configurations, the instance status, the alarm status, the availability zone, and all of these are details with respect to instances. Now under instance types, the instance types basically are the various categories or the various capacities of the instances. So you have to provision an instance or you have to create a virtual server on AWS cloud, and you want to know what capacity of the server you can provision. You want to make use of these instance types, or you want to reference these instance types. Now when you click on instance type, it is worth noting that there are different instance types available on AWS. And what is an instance type? The instance type basically is the capacity of every given instance. So AWS gives you a lot of details about the capacity of every given instance. If you select T2 Micro, for example, AWS tells you this instance will give you one virtual CPU. The architecture is 86 64-bit. You have a 0.612 gigabit of memory with default storage. The network performance is very low. You'll be paying 0.035 US dollar per hour for Windows pricing, and you'll be paying the same. You'll be paying 0.0424 for on-demand Linux pricing. So let's come back to instances. Meaning, if you're trying to perform some configuration on a Linux instance and you select an EC2 of the type T2 Micro, you mean you have different configuration capabilities. Let's come back. Let's search for the T2 Micros. These are the instances that you mostly use. If you select the T2 Nano or the T2 Micro or the T2 Small, if you see the T2 Nano gives you 0.05 gigabit of memory. If you see the T2 Micro gives you 1 gigabit of memory, and so on. So these are the reasons, or these are the configurations or the conditions under which you select a particular instance type. And when you select a particular instance type, you see a lot more information about the instance. So for the case of our T2 Micro, the instance type is T2 Micro. They tell you they have auto recovery support. The instance family is T2 family. The instance size is micro. These are the hypervisors, and then it's on demand. If you select any other T2 medium, depending on the characteristics that you want for your application, depending if they say you need a particular amount of vCPU or a particular amount of memory, you can pick a particular instance type. So this is the most important thing. You should also know the various instance types as far as AWS is concerned. Now we equally have AMIs. AMIs basically kind of like the operating system that you use to create virtual machines. So if you click here on information, they'll tell you an AMI contains a software configuration, for example, an operating system, an application server, and applications required for creating EC2 instances. So if you have to create an EC2 instance, you must specify an AMI. Now there are some AMIs that have already been created by default by you. So you can create your own AMI, and there'll be AMIs that are owned by me, or like you see on the console, AMIs owned by me, as well as you can see public Amazon machine images, meaning these are images that have already been created for different operating systems and available online. So these are different images that you can have: Ubuntu image, Binami. So all of these are Amazon machine images. For you to launch an instance, you need to have an Amazon machine image. And then of course we equally have volumes as far as the EC2 is concerned. The volumes basically is like the storage. If you're creating a resource, if you want to store, just like you have a hard drive, if you want to store information in that hard drive from your computer, you have what we call a volume. So volumes give us the possibility to store data from our EC2 instances. And then we equally have the security groups. Of course, we already saw security groups previously. With the help of security group, we are able to get into our given resources. So every instance must have a security group attached to it. It's like a firewall. Every instance must have a firewall controlling access to and out of the instance. Now we equally have something very important: key pairs. We're going to see all of these key pairs. Key pairs enable us to be able to log into an instance or into a compute resource using the command line interface. If you are to log in using the command line interface, you must have key pairs. And of course, we have load balancing that gives us the possibility to manage traffic between two or more instances, and then auto scaling group that help us to specify or to create a given set of instances at a given time. Let's come back to our dashboard. Here's a summary of the key components which you must know as far as EC2 is concerned. In our next module, we are going to be launching some default resources. We are going to create some 2 default instances so you have an understanding of what an instance is and how to provision an instance.